Konnichiwa, minasan. O genki desu ka? Welcome to the intermediate course of my channel. Let's learn Japanese with Eric. In this lesson, we will learn the use of the pseudonoun toki, which means the time when. Yoroshii desu ka? Hajimemashou. Toki is a noun that means time, but when used as a pseudonoun, it introduces or technically nominalizes a subordinate time clause in a sentence, which means the time when. For example, the time when I go to school, I ride the bus. The subjects of the toki subordinate clause and the main clause may be the same or different. When the two subjects are different, the subject of the toki clause typically takes the subject particle ga, and the subject of the main clause typically takes the topic particle wa. As a pseudonoun, toki works with verbs, adjectives, and nouns. Let's look at verbs first. Toki nominalizes verb clauses, or turns them into nouns. You can review nominalization using nouns in lesson 43. Grammatically, the verbs are usually in three forms. The first is in its dictionary form or ru form, ru-toki. When this happens, the meaning of the toki clause is right before I do. Then the verb can also be in the progressive form or te-iru form, te-iru toki. This means when I am doing. At this point, I assume you know how to make the progressive form of verbs, or you can review the topic in lesson 33. And lastly, the verb can be in the plain past form or ta form, ta-toki, in which case it means right after I do. There's really no confusion with number 2. The confusion in using toki arises from numbers 1 and 3. The first verb or V1 in the toki clause can come in the ru form and also in the ta form. And the verb in the main clause or V2 can also come in the non-past tense or past tense. The tense of the whole sentence is decided by the tense in the main clause or V2. You can have non-past sentences with either a ru form or a ta form in its toki clause. And you can also have sentences in the past tense having either a ru form or ta form in its toki clause. This results in 4 combinations. For each one, the meaning would be different. Our first example illustrates one agent doing 2 actions. The sentence, Watashi wa neru toki gyūnyū wo nomimasu. Watashi wa neru toki gyūnyū wo nomimasu. We have neru toki in our subordinate clause. It is non-past, so the meaning of the sentence is, I drink milk right before I sleep. The ru-toki conjugation is quite similar to the ru-maini conjugation, before doing, which we learned in lesson 35, except that ru-toki means right before I do. Now let's contrast this to Watashi wa neta toki gyūnyū wo nomimasu. Watashi wa neta toki gyūnyū wo nomimasu. Now we have neta toki, and V1 is in the plain past tense. The meaning of this sentence is, I drink milk right after I sleep. Meaning, first thing you do upon waking up is drink milk. Very different meaning from the first sentence where we used neru toki. Ta-toki is similar to another conjugation we learned earlier, the te-kara or after conjugation that we learned in lesson 36. Now let's look at the same sentences in the past tense. Watashi wa neru toki gyūnyū wo nomimashita. Watashi wa neru toki gyūnyū wo nomimashita. Now we have the main verb as nomimashita, past tense, drank, and neru toki in the subordinate clause. And in English, I drank milk right before I slept. And this sentence, Watashi wa neta toki gyūnyū wo nomimashita. Watashi wa neta toki gyūnyū wo nomimashita. We have the same sense except for a change in V1 to neta toki. And in English, I drank milk right after I slept. Another example, same case. 食べる時、薬を飲みます。食べる時、薬を飲みます。Translation: I take my meds right before I eat. Next sentence. 食べた時、薬を飲みます。食べた時、薬を飲みます。Translation: I take my meds right after I eat. 食べる時、薬を飲みました。食べる時、薬を飲みました。I took my meds right before I ate. And 食べた時、薬を飲みました。食べた時、薬を飲みました。I took my meds right after I ate. Last combination example. トイレに行くとき、手を洗う。トイレに行くとき、手を洗う。In English, I wash my hands right before I go to the washroom. トイレに行ったとき、手を洗う。トイレに行ったとき、手を洗う。I wash my hands right after I go to the washroom. トイレに行くとき、手を洗った。トイレに行くとき、手を洗った。I washed my hands right before I went to the washroom. And トイレに行ったとき、手を洗った。トイレに行ったとき、手を洗った。I washed my hands right after I went to the washroom. So, from a sanitation point of view, these two sentences make sense. Washing one's hands after using the washroom and not before. Toki already indicates time, so the particle ni isn't needed after it. However, when you attach ni to it, the meaning changes to emphasis. It is the time when. For example, 私は寝る時に牛乳を飲みます。私は寝る時に牛乳を飲みます。We have 時に。In English, it is right before I sleep that I drink milk. We can also use verbs in the plain non-past negative plus toki to make nai-toki to indicate the time when I don't do. For example, 仕事しない時に音楽を聴いたり本を読んだりします。仕事しない時に音楽を聴いたり本を読んだりします。Our V1 is 仕事しない and our main verb is a taritari suru conjugation which enumerates actions in no particular order. We learned this in lesson 53. In English, the whole sentence means, it is when I don't work that I listen to music, read books, among other things. Our next example is te-iru toki, when I'm doing. The sentence, 私が勉強している時、お父さんが電気を消してしまった。私が勉強している時、お父さんが電気を消してしまった。Our V1 is 勉強している, and we have 私 as a subject in the subordinate clause. And お父さん is a subject in the main clause. Our V2 or main verb is 消してしまった, which expresses regret, a conjugation that we learned in lesson 42. The whole sentence translates to, when I was studying, Dad unfortunately switched off the lights. What's the difference between te-iru toki and te-iru aida? We just learned about te-iru aida in the previous lesson. In a nutshell, we use te-iru toki when the verb in the main clause is over in an instant, and we use te-iru aida or te-iru aida ni when the two actions happen over a span of time and there is some overlap in duration. Just to review our previous sentence, 私が勉強しているとき、お父さんが電気を消してしまった。When I was studying, Dad switched off the lights. Turning off the lights, or 消してしまった, happens quickly, in an instant. That's why we use ているとき. Now this sentence, 私が勉強している間、お父さんはテレビを見ていた. 私が勉強している間、お父さんはテレビを見ていた. In English, when I was studying, Dad was watching TV. Our main verb is was watching or 見ていた, which happens over a period of time, overlapping the time when I was studying. That's why we use te-iru, aida. When the main verb or V2 is in the past tense and V1 is a stative verb, then V1 can be in the ru form or ta form. For example, this sentence, 学校にいる時、田中先生と話しました. Our main verb is in the past tense, 話しました, and our V1 is the verb いる, to exist, which is a stative verb. So we can also use the past tense of いる, which is いた, and say, 学校にいた時、田中先生と話しました. And in English, when I was at the school, I spoke with Professor Tanaka. Another example, お金がある時、映画を見た. Our main verb is in the past tense, 見た or saw, and our V1 verb is ある to exist for non-living things, which is also a stative verb. So we can also use the past tense of ある, あった, and say, お金があった時、映画を見た. It means, when I had money, I watched movies. Next, we look at the use of toki with adjectives. E-adjectives are put directly in front of toki. For example, takai toki, when it's expensive. And for na-adjectives, the adjective has to be in the na form. For example, shizukana toki, the time when it is quiet. Here's an E-adjective example. 天気が暑い時、海に行きます. 天気が暑い時、海に行きます. When it's hot, I go to the beach. 私は寂しい時、お母さんに相談します. 私は寂しい時、お母さんに相談します. When I'm lonely, I talk to mom. 株は安い時は買います。高い時は売ります。株は安い時は買います。高い時は売ります。About stocks, I buy when it's cheap. I sell when it's expensive. Some na-adjective examples. 静かな時、中国語を勉強します。静かな時、中国語を勉強します。When it's quiet, I study Chinese. おばあさんは元気な時、公園を散歩します。おばあさんは元気な時、公園を散歩します。Grandma strolls the park when she's fine. 暇な時、何をしますか？暇な時は運動します。暇な時、何をしますか？暇な時は運動します。What do you do when you're free? When I'm free, I exercise. The adjectives are typically in the non-past forms, but because adjectives usually indicate state, then like stative verbs, when the main verb is in the past tense, the adjective can also be in the past tense. Let's use an earlier example converted to the past tense. 天気が暑い時、海に行きました. Our main verb 行きました is in the past tense, and because adjectives are stative, we can also use the past tense of the adjective and say 天気が暑かった時、海に行きました. I went to the beach when it was hot. Next, we'll look at nouns, but in this category, we'll also include the prenominal pronouns. この時 means this time. その時 means that time, with the listener also knowing what that sono is. あの時 also means that time, but it's a matter that only the speaker is familiar with, but the listener isn't. どの時 means which time. With nouns, we use noun no toki, There's the particle no in between because toki is grammatically a noun. その時、私はまだ学生だった。その時、私はまだ学生だった。At that time, I was still a student. 子供の時、私はひらがなを覚えました。子供の時、私はひらがなを覚えました。I memorized the hiragana alphabet when I was a child. 夏の時、かき氷を食べましょう。夏の時、かき氷を食べましょう。Let's eat shaved ice when it's summer. 祭りの時、この町は賑やかになる。祭りの時、この町は賑やかになる。This town becomes lively when it's festival time. Toki is like any other noun that nominalizes clauses. 林さんは会社の時の知り合いです。林さんは会社の時の知り合いです。Mr. Hayashi is an acquaintance from my time working at the company. Here we have the particle no coming after toki. This one is from the popular song Kessen no Kinyobi. あなたといる時の自分が一番好き。あなたといる時の自分が一番好き。The self when I'm with you is the best, or I like myself best when I'm with you. Again, we have the particle no coming after toki. 日本人は子供の時から豆腐を食べます。日本人は子供の時から豆腐を食べます。Japanese people eat tofu since childhood. Here we have kara coming after toki. 僕は君といる時が一番好きです。僕は君といる時が一番好きです。I like best the time when I'm with you. And here we have the particle ga following toki. To summarize, we learned how to use the pseudonoun toki to make subordinate clauses that mean the time when. The agents in the toki clause and the main clause can be the same or different. The tense of the whole sentence depends on the tense of the verb in the main clause. Here are the possibilities when using verbs with toki. Ru-toki means right before doing the action. Te-iru-toki means when doing the action. Ta-toki means right after doing the action. And nai-toki means when not doing the action. Adjectives in the E form and na form can be put directly before toki. It means when something is nantoka nantoka. The prenominal pronouns kono, sono, ano, and dono can also be put before toki. Kono toki means this time. Sonotoki and anotoki both mean at that time. And donotoki means which time. Now no toki means at the time of. So this ends our lesson on the use of the pseudonoun toki. Nihongo no benkyou ni ganbatte kudasai. Mata aimashou ne. Otsukaresama deshita. If you're serious about becoming fluent in Japanese, it's important to practice daily, learn grammar, and build up vocabulary. My whole course is designed to give you a strong basic foundation in the Japanese language that you can build solidly upon. So please click like, share, or subscribe and watch the next video in the series. Nihongo no benkyou ni ganbatte kudasai. じゃあ、またね。